Want to go far in business and in life? You can't do it alone. The secret is expanding your network of personal relationships, building friendships, connecting on an intimate level, away from the office, over a coffee or cocktail. Welcome to All In with the real Nate Payo. The show that asks what happens when you go all in and leverage the power of your network of personal relationships.
Hello and welcome to the All In podcast. I am Nate Payo, your host. I'm joined today with a new, close, awesome friend, Jax Cunningham. Jax is somebody that I met. Welcome to the show, Jax. Sorry, how are you today? So I met Jax through a common friend. Of course, we both knew Sarah Kilburn, who's been a guest on this podcast. And Sarah's a super connector, and she's like, "Hey, you need to go have lunch with Jax." And Jax had emailed me and said, "Hey, let's get together." So we ended up setting up a chance to go have a business lunch. And at the time, Jax is working for a company that's in the construction space, and it was somebody that there was an opportunity to maybe do business with. So I went down to Del Mar, met up with her. I was a little bit late and texted her, "Hey, I'm running a little bit late." She's like, "No big deal. I'm just sitting out on the back patio looking out over the beach and enjoying the day." So show up there, go find her. We sit down, we start having lunch, and we decided, we're conversing. What the intent was like, hey, we're going to talk a little bit about business. But we ended up probably chatting for like 2 hours. Business related, but zero to do with like what we could do for each other. Just, trade stories of people who we knew and our theories about life. So I'm super excited to have Jax on the show because she is another person that I consider a super connector, knows everybody and just finds so much value and so much passion connecting other people to each other. So I'm so thankful to have you on the show here.
Thank you. Thank you.
So you're down in San Diego, and what do you think? Like we're talking about stuff that's timely right now, but it might be is not timely when this podcast goes live. But we're sitting here in the middle of COVID-19. There's a show about networking, about meeting people and connecting with people. We're surely in this space where we're not able to do this on a face-to-face, person-to-person relationship. So what's it kind of been like for you adapting and moving into this situation of dealing with being socially isolated from people, or what we call socially distanced?
Yes, socially distanced. So it's interesting. I have not had a problem adapting, and there's several reasons why. When we met for lunch that day, I'd mentioned kind of a little bit about my life story about that, I'm an immigrant to America. I'm Australian, and I moved here months just prior to 9/11, which shaped my life, not because I was directly affected, but because I had the opportunity to stay. And the interesting part is, I've been physically disconnected from my family who lives, super far away for a really long time. So I've been used to connecting with people and staying deeply connected and building relationships without the physical location. So that's not new for me. And in addition to that, I started working for myself in 2012 in Australia. And then I came back to America and kept going that way. And, coaching people in business development, representing people and things like that. And the interesting part to that for me is that I've had clients, globally. So I'm used to this. This is not new to me. This is not uncomfortable for me. And it's never been uncomfortable for me because what was I, 22? I packed up my suitcase and video conferencing. I don't even think it was I don't even remember I think Skype was available back then. Mm-hmm. But it was, dial-up connection, and so I was still writing letters. Email was a big deal. So my connections, I learned at a very early age in life to connect with people without being physically close to them, and I also went to boarding school. So I was socially physically distanced then. So this is not new for me. It hasn't been a difficult adaptation. And as you and I were talking earlier, I know people see me as this massive extrovert and I'm loud and gregarious and all of these things, but I'm
typical Australian, right?
typical Australian, but I love my home life. Like I love being at home, and I love being, even though my husband's working like a maniac, I love being in the house and having the option to cook 3 meals a day for him and connecting, even if it's for 5 minutes here and there. And so I've actually found this for me is not challenging. What's challenging for me is people not being intelligent during this time and not being respectful. And so, again, for me, I'd say it's been easy. I mean, I'm probably the worst person to ask. I find this really easy and great. It's not challenging for me because, again, this is what I've been doing for 18 years.
So why would you decide that you wanted to pack up your bags and come from Australia all the way to the United States, not knowing a soul, or maybe you did know somebody, but what would make you take that wild leap?
So it's interesting that you ask. If you'd asked me this question about 6 months, 12 months ago, I would have given you my stock standard answer, which was I was studying to be a Japanese teacher and I needed a break, which was true. But what I haven't really talked about is that I have a very challenging relationship with my immediate family. And I had a very tumultuous childhood and I needed a break. I needed emotional and mental and, to be honest, physical break from my family. I love them, but it was challenging and I needed space. So I decided to put a really big ocean between us. And I came across not knowing a single soul. I genuinely didn't know anyone. I came across my counselor at school. I spent a lot of time with her, talking with her about what I should do. And she said to me, why don't you go for 6 months to America? There's a program. And she goes, I've actually got a program in San Diego or in Rome, Italy that I can set you up on. And she said, you will be a live-in nanny. So then that way, and if I had kids that were school age, and as long as I was helping them with the homework and everything, then it could go towards my work experience. Mm-hmm. So my teacher set me up on that and came over here. And by the time I got here, there was a massive cluster with the family. And I moved from one family to the next for a little while till I found, kind of my space. And then 9/11 happened, and when 9/11 happened, I had a girlfriend here. She was in Virginia on the same program as me. And it freaked her out because she was very close to the Pentagon. So she left immediately. Mm-hmm. And I made the decision to stay. And I made the decision that I felt safest physically here. I felt that what was going on in the world, none of us knew, kind of like where we are right now. Like it feels dangerous, and it's like, where do I feel safest? And to be honest, I felt safest here, and I decided to stay, and kind of one thing led to the next. And then we recovered from I don't know that we've ever recovered from 9/11, but recovered as much as we could possibly recover. And then America became, as much as my heart healed and as much as my family healed, as much as you can, my heart stayed here, and I did try. I moved back in 2012 to try to live in Australia, and it didn't fit. I wasn't fit. And I tried really, really hard. And just my heart belongs here, and it's where I'm happy. America makes me happy. San Diego specifically makes me happy.
Well, San Diego is a beautiful place to be. Now, we mentioned earlier that I consider you a super connector, and anybody that knows you would agree with that. But when we're growing up and we're figuring out our role, we're figuring out our voice, we're figuring out who we are, we don't necessarily always set out to be like, I'm a super connector. I want to meet people and I want to help people out and get to know as many people as I can. Like, when did you start realizing that you were a super connector? Like, walk through that journey through yourself of getting to know people in a land that you knew nobody, to becoming somebody that everybody knows who Jax is. Of course, everybody knows Jax. Like, you got to meet Jax if you haven't. How did that come about?
So it's interesting. I've reflected a lot on that. And there was a point in my childhood when I was really, really little. Like, I'm guessing I must have been 5 or 6. And I know the age range because of where we were physically living. And I remember it like it was yesterday, because I remember like the car seats, the smell of the car, all that kind of stuff. And in Australia, we have these things called a tavern, and it's like where you go and get what they call a counter meal. And so like you go to the counter and they bring the food over to you, and there's like a bar over there, and then there's like a kid's playground, and it's kind of a family place to go, right? And that was the big deal, and when I was a kid. And we went to this tavern, and there was this playground, and it was all nature forms. So it was like rocks and woods and like this little riverbed. And I was playing, and I remember making friends. I remember that night specifically, and in the car ride home, my brother got really angry, and he said, "Do you have to make friends everywhere you go? Do you have to talk to everyone?" And I went, "But it's fun." And he got really angry that I was making friends. And he and I aren't close. He doesn't speak to me. So I don't know why that's ever bothered him. I don't understand that, because when you meet my brother, he's an incredible human. I mean, we're all challenged. We all have our faults in life, but he's a very charismatic human. So it's kind of was funny to me that he was upset with me when he was the most popular kid in school, and so when I came to the States, I mean, I've just never been afraid of other humans. And I think that boils down to my grandma, who I was very, very blessed in my life that I had a grandmother like mine. Sadly, she's no longer with us, but she had this heart of gold, and she was very quiet, very loving, nurturing human being, but very connected with people on a deep level. And when she asked questions, she genuinely meant it. So like if my grandma saw you, she asked you how you are, she meant, how are you? She didn't, it wasn't like, oh, the sun, she genuinely wanted to know. And she'd remember things like, she used to teach at a disadvantaged school. And we'd go and read stories to these kids, and I'd go with her. And she'd remember things with the parents. Like she'd remember that someone's grandmother was sick, or someone's mother had this or that. She was true. She was authentic. She was real. And her husband, my grandfather, who I was blessed to be there when he crossed over, same thing. Everybody knew Leslie John. Where I grew up, everybody knew my granddad. Like Leslie John, he was known as LJ. And when he died, there was literally a parade, like people like driving behind him. Everybody knew who he was because he was authentic. He was real. He was never fake. And I think that for me has helped me in my life, and that I couldn't fake it if I tried. I'm terrible at it, One of the worst and best traits of me is I wear my heart on my sleeve, And when I ask people, hey, how's it going? I don't mean, oh, you're fine. Well, tell me about that fine. What does fine mean? Does fine mean you're okay? Does fine mean that you're happy the sun's out? Like, don't give me fine. Tell me,
Well, sometimes people are so used to being asked, like, hey, how's it going? Oh, good. Like, it just comes right out. So do you ever like ask different questions, like to get the answers you're looking, not to get somebody to open up and give you the real answer, the real thing that you're looking to get out of them?
Yeah. So I started asking probably about a year ago, and it started like freaking people out. When I was going to events, I'd be like, so what's making you happy these days? And they're like they literally stop and look at me, and they're like, what do you mean? And I go, so what's like, do you have travel plans? Have you started a new sport, trying a new restaurant? And they look at me like, what? I don't get it, And so it's funny, like when you ask people a real question, it stops them in their tracks. And so for me, one of the biggest things I've learned is to stop asking, how are you?
Yeah.
And I start asking people like, hey, I want to check in with you. Before this all started, I used to ask people, hey, I'm just checking in. I'm getting a temperature on how you're doing these days. Like, I know you're busy. I know you've got this, but how are you? Like, what's new in your life? What needs to change? And, what do you want to change this, And it's interesting when you ask people that, they kind of stumble and stutter. But if you give them and just pause and let them answer, they'll answer. Let me ask you, what do you want to change?
What do I want to change? I don't want to be awkward. I don't want to be awkward. No, like you're right, and maybe if I go down this path, I'll be avoiding your question. But I'll answer your question. No, I'll go with what I want to do. Like this coronavirus, this social distancing, this work from home, this shelter in place thing that's going on, I've been amazed and distraught at the same time, because I think we're in the middle of witnessing a major shift in the way people live their daily lives. And we don't know how it's going to be. And it's probably going to be very painful to go through, but it's going to be so dramatically different in a year from now of where we were today, like dramatically different, unbelievably different. So that's got me like excited and distressed at the same time. One, because we're going to be going through some tough times, and we all are going to suffer at different varying degrees, and some people are going to suffer more than others. And that I don't look forward to. But at the same time, there's like going to be these amazing opportunities that you can take advantage of if you got your eyes open. And I think, especially with like everybody moving into these Zoom meetings and digitally connecting, FaceTime, WhatsApp, and stuff like that, there's been this massive tipping point. You can't find a webcam on Amazon right now. Like, you can't get one. So like everybody's got one, and this technology's been around for a while, but when the adoption rate goes up so fast, and so there's so many people that just kind of maybe would do it, or they'd get on, but they wouldn't turn the video on. Now it's like, boom, video's on, we're doing it. Now people are playing board games together. They're having happy hours together. They're doing this. So there's these amazing ways to connect with people that really people weren't taking advantage of anymore. And it's going to turn into a different way of having life. So you're going to be able to stay connected to people that you always had the opportunity to, but maybe you didn't. But now you might even go and interact with people you had never thought possible of meeting somebody. Like, what if you had like some interest in meeting somebody that lived in Florida for playing checkers on the thing? Now you can play checkers in real life. And it's not that you couldn't before, it's just everybody's more adept at doing this and more willing to do it. So I think that's really exciting. So when you ask, like, what was your question? Like what?
I was asking you, what do you want to see change? But you answered that.
Yeah. So that's where I'm kind of excited about. But I wanted to go back and talk about the way of you asking their question. Like, you're getting people to, one, pause and think about, hey, why is this person, like, why do they want to know about me? One, that's weird, because most people are so busy and they're so used to not being shown the time of day or the interest. And so when you stop and you're like, who's this person that's really interested in me and they genuinely want to hear, and you're truly looking for the real answer, the real them, and you say stuff like, I'm checking in on you. So it's not just like this brief passing moment where you met somebody and then a year from later you're like, oh man, I met that person. They're super cool, but we just never chatted again. And all of a sudden now it's like this weird awkward space. I want to reach out, but too much time's passed and they probably forgot who I even was. But you're keeping that friendship, that relationship warm. And so when you lead with this authentic interest in people, it's easier to pick right back up where you left off, or it's like, yeah, that person really makes me feel special. And I think when we're trying to make relationships with people, we're trying to build a network of people. Like, people hear that, like, I'm networking, like, oh, I'm trying to conduct a business deal with somebody at every chance I can and shake hands and kiss babies and do whatever it is to play the part. But really, networking is you're building relationships, personal relationships with people at a very relatable level, with the intent of not what me and you can do together, but who in my group can I connect to you, or in your group, who can we match make together that are going to find a lot of value because they know each other. And when you're focused on all these things, all of a sudden people like really stand out. Like, you go, I met Jackson. She made me feel like one of the most important people I've met at this time. And this relationship really goes from being complete strangers to friends very, very quickly. And especially when you know, like, some of the same people, and they're just like, come so highly recommended, this network thing just really pays off because you just have this level of trust almost immediately of like, if so-and-so says this is good, like if Sarah told me, with Jax, I don't have to question that this is a good, solid person that I need to know and meet. And if they tell me to go meet somebody else, no questions asked. Like we pick up the phone, we take the call of whoever they said, hey, we'd like you to meet. So, yeah, that's what I kind of wanted to just touch on is like what you were saying of how you develop friendships and why I think that's so important.
It's interesting, just as you said that, for me, something that popped into my head, and this is just how I operate in life, like something will hit me. But you know how they're using the statistics of, coronavirus, and in my household, it's called Kavina. We've decided she's a really nasty woman. So we've nicknamed her Kavina. That came about one night after a few too many glasses of champagne. I've decided I nicknamed her Kavina. So anyways, they, you know how they say statistically, like someone has it, right? And they don't know they have it, and they reach out and they touch 10 people, and those 10 people. So let's use that as a positive thing about connection, right? Mm-hmm. So, it only takes one person to be truly authentic and truly real and be emotionally intelligent and aware enough to just be that. And then when you start doing that and you teach 5 to 10 other people, and those 5 to 10 other people are going to start being that way. And then those 10, so then it's going to be rather than having the coronavirus be this horrible thing, let's turn it into this positive, like, let's turn it into the numbers of how to truly deeply connect, Mm-hmm. And it's one of those things for me is that the biggest mistake I've seen, if I can touch on this for a minute, because it's one of my little pet peeves in life, and it's interesting. I had a client in Australia for a number of years, and a great, incredible company called Amicus. I love them. And we still are connected, and we still refer each other business. And they came out to the States for a check-in with me, right? Because I was doing their business development. And we went to this event, and there was 500 people in the room. And at the end of it, I was like, so how did that work out for you? Like, what touched you? What didn't? And they're like, oh my goodness. They're like, it's so amazing to me how many people in that room looked at us like we were dollar signs. And when they realized there was no immediate dollar sign payoff, they walked away. Mm-hmm. And I went, so I stopped and I started looking around at when I would go to events. A, I checked my own behavior. And B, I started to see who saw me as a dollar figure, who mm-hmm. saw me and connected with me. And I was like, oh, and it changed the way that I did business in a sense of when someone saw me as a dollar figure, the interesting part was rather than getting upset about it, I'd actually try and find them a business deal, or I'd try and find them to someone that was helpful for them. And I became like really vigilant about that. Like when I felt like someone treated me like a dollar figure, a dollar sign, or, oh, she can't help me because she's not a developer or whatever, I'd start introducing them to someone that could help them intentionally. Because it's like, I can either get mad about it or I can show them how to really do it right.
Well, I've always had this, well, maybe not always, but my current view that I think I've felt for a while is that you never know. There's this thing of like, you never know. So when somebody, and I think it started off with like, probably somebody told me like, hey, never burn a bridge because you never know. Like that young kid coming up out of college that is a brat and you treat him like shit, like you might end up working for him one day. And I started noticing that like I might work for one company and not take the phone calls of this vendor, and then things change, I'm working for a different company, and now that person who wouldn't take their phone calls is now the preferred vendor of this new company I'm working for, and I don't have a relationship with them. So it becomes, so I started kind of noticing like, hey, don't ever burn any bridges. But then it started to become this, you never know. You never know, one, who knows who, and you never know which person that you meet is going to be that one person that connects you. So if I looked at you and I said, oh, there's dollar signs or no dollar signs, you have nothing to offer, and I shut you off or I cut you out as like, oh, that's not somebody of real importance for me to know. I've categorized you as that's not my intent of meeting this person at this event or knowing this person. And then I've made an assumption of you that you might know 6 or 7 people that would have done infinite amount of business with me that I just completely cut off. So I think it's so important to just realize that, like, if you go in the intent of like, hey, you never know when somebody's going to be the right connection. If they could be the connection now, they could be the connection later. They could connect you to somebody that's really going to make a difference in your life. Open-mindedness, and just roll with it, see where it goes, and try to make that a personal connection first. You're going to see so much success, maybe not immediately, but all of a sudden in like 5 years time, you're like, oh my God, if I didn't take a lunch with Jax that one day, I never would have met this person, or I never would have introduced you to another. And so before we got on the phone, we kind of talked a little story about like what happens if you don't trust the process. You just kind of don't follow your passions and your dreams. So like maybe you could reshare that story of what happens when you stop doing things that make you unhappy and chase the things that are your passion.
That's interesting that you asked me that, because one of the things that I have really assessed during this downtime, and the irony is, I've been dealing with major dental surgery during this time. Like, I've had 3 weeks. Each week I've been in a dental chair getting major surgery done, right? And so, and I don't do drugs of any description, like even over the counter pain medication. I've been living on it, so I've been like a little out of it. And so it's funny though, because I've been forced to, like, I hate to say it, lie down. And, and really truly rest outside of all of this. I've been forced. And what's come out of it for me is, what is it that I'm missing? Like, what are the parts of me that I don't take enough time for? Or what are the things that I'm missing right now as a result of all of this, And one of the things for me is that, I love being outside in nature, and I love being, able to, I'm a runner at heart. I'm never going to be the first to the finish line, and I'm okay with that, but I love to run. I genuinely do, but things that I'm passionate about that I think I've forgotten is that I love to connect people, not just because of business, but to be a person, to help them grow as a human, and I think that for me is the key to who I am at the core, whether it's for business, whether it's to grow as a human. And I'll reiterate that story that you and I shared, and he'll love me for this forever because he's a super shy guy, but super charismatic. So I'll just call him, well, his name is Evan, so I'll leave it at that. But anyways, Evan's in our industry, super charismatic, amazing human. And he and I met, actually, I realized just now, we met at, we were the founding board members for the Next Gen ICSC, right? And he and I were connecting at the table, and he worked for a developer at the time. And so I was like, hey, like, I'd love to grab drinks with you, whatever. And so we met, as I was mentioning, at the top of the Hard Rock Hotel, and it was brand kind of new at the time. That's how long ago it was. Giving away my age. Anyways, he and I were kind of digging in, and I was asking him non-work questions, and he was getting really frustrated. I could tell he was getting frustrated, as I mentioned. And I called him out, and I just said, you're really unhappy. You're miserable. Like, this is not what you want to be doing, And I did. I was cheeky and filled in part of his passport papers for him, dropped them off to his office with coffee and a brownie to kind of make it a little sweeter. And he did. He ended up traveling the world and surfing, and I got mentioned in a magazine in a story. I don't think he named me, but like, there was this girl, and I'm like, I was that girl,
Yeah.
And I know that that's not the only story, but, I tend to push people a little bit. Some people find it irritating. Some people enjoy it. But I think about all the people that have pushed me to be the better version of myself. For me, connection and networking are two very different things. And for me, when I go to network, connection is first. Mm-hmm. And I have to have an authentic connection with someone to do business with them. Otherwise, I can't. It's just who I am, And, there's an example of this guy that I just love and adore in our industry, and he's in the financial side. And his name is Dave. And one of the things he said to me once was, he's like, how do you get CEOs to talk to you at like these events? I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, you'll walk up and they'll talk to you for like 10, 15 minutes. And I'm like, it's one of those like, I didn't realize. But then I realized I was introducing those CEOs to like my banking buddies, or their kid needs a soccer coach, or their wife is starting a business and needs some advice and wanted to talk to this woman or needed this. And it's like I had to think about it, like what it was about those connections. And the interesting part is I had to flip it for him and go, you do that. And he's like, what are you talking about? And I go, you've never seen me as a dollar sign, ever. The first time you ever met me, you had no idea who my boyfriend at the time, who now is my husband, was. And my husband and him now do business, so much business that they are like, first of all, he ended up being the best man at our wedding. We've known him for so long now. And like his kids come and stay at my house not now, but they used to. Yeah. I'm Auntie Jacks to their kids. And it's because I trusted him and because he trusted me. And we connected not because either one of us saw each other as dollar signs. It was hey, this is one of, come meet my wife and chat with my, I think you and my wife would really get along and she'd love to, branch out and have more friends. And it's one of those things, if you don't connect with someone, don't try and do business with them. Because the reality is when the shit hits the fan, excuse my French, you're not going to get through it. Mm-hmm. You're not. And the reality is I don't know a single project on the planet that goes smoothly. And if you said it went smoothly, you're lying. And so if you have a true connection with someone, then you can get through it. You can talk about it. You can be authentic about it and say, you know what? And the biggest problem that happens, especially in our industry, is people point fingers and go, it was this person's fault. Well, if you're connected to the other team in a real authentic way, you're not going to pass the blame because you don't want that person to look bad. You're going to own your stuff. Yeah. And it changes the way you problem solve. It changes the way of the outcome because here's the reality. No one remembers how you started the race or how you started the project. They remember how you closed it out. Mm-hmm. And they remember how you recovered from the challenges that you faced.
I think they remember how you made them feel. If you made somebody feel like a part of the team or a part of the solution when you had a problem, and you made them feel like I didn't throw them under the bus, I didn't backstab them, I didn't blame their faults, but I stood up for them and said, hey, we had problems, we all stood up, we all figured out solutions, we all worked together. That's even something that's better than somebody made me feel good, but somebody like vouched for me, somebody like had my back. And those type of connections like last and they mean something. So for me, when I think, like you said, networking is different. Like it's about developing real connections, and it's maybe you just don't say, like, where are you going out? I'm going to a Making Real Connections event for industry. So we call it networking, but really it's about getting to know somebody on a personal level and trying to make it about them. And when for me, when I started going through my career, I started doing stuff for myself. Like it's important to chase career development and personal development. But like when I'd achieve my goals or achieve my whatever I was after, like it would be kind of like, all right, I checked the box, but what's next? Check the box, what's next? And maybe I thought the next day would make me feel fulfilled and find me joy and find me passion. And I'd be super inspired on this ongoing basis, not just in the moment inspired, but then 2 days later be like, oh, really not feeling it, or I hit my mark, like there's nothing left to go forward. But when I started realizing I got more value and more fulfillment out of helping others be successful. Like, I met somebody that was new in sales, and like, I like you. I think you got a ton of potential and a ton of just excitement. Like, I want you to meet some other people. I want you to get plugged into our industry. I want to make you connections to these people. And, those are the things I felt more fulfilled about. If I could watch somebody's personal development grow and they got introduced to somebody who introduced them to somebody else. And all of a sudden, like 5 years down the road, they're just crushing it at life. And they're also, practicing those same things and connecting other people to other things, and just people finding value within each other. That's what I think is so much more important. And you can't do that overnight. You can't just go to one thing, collect a bunch of cards. You have to, like you said, live it, breathe it, reach out to people. You can't let conversations go cold. You have to check in with everybody. And it's easier and harder to do it. Like if you're on social media, like it's easier to see what people are up to. Like, oh, maybe I didn't talk to you for like 6 months, but I've seen your posts. But it's like, I really should be engaging them and stuff like that. So I say, just, make a comment on their social media post, make a like, or send them a direct message like, hey, this is really cool. And then usually it puts it back in like, hey, yeah, what's going on? What's new? What's making you happy in your life? And you're having a conversation, which usually leads to like, are you going to be at this other event? Let's grab coffee ahead of time. And
yeah. And that's exactly it. I think one of the, it's funny, it's funny, there's a lot of things that are aha moments for me during this conversation. And I have this vision board that's been up for a while, and there's a few things on it that have come, like there's pictures, and I'm like, oh yeah, that looks like kind of like when we were in Bali, or this looks like when I did this. And the funny part is, there's been this sign on that vision board, leave behind a legacy. And I'm like, I'm so far away from leaving a legacy because I don't have children, and we decided not to have kids. And I'm like, oh my goodness, that is my legacy. I'm like, I'm leaving my legacy. Like I'm creating it right now. And I'm like, oh, like that is going to be my life legacy. Is like, I'm looking at these kids who I was a nanny for and taught them at Montessori when I first landed here. And embarrassingly enough, I can say I changed half their diapers, and now they're the ones who are, become like training to be executives at like LinkedIn and places like that. And I'm like, and Salesforce. And I'm like, these are kids that I taught. And yet they come back to me and they're like, oh, do you remember when you taught me this? And I'm like, no, did I teach you that? And they're like, so it's funny that the mark that we can leave on people is really, really important. Mm-hmm. And I think for me that, that started really early in life with my beautiful grandmother, my beautiful grandfather. Like, they've left such a mark on my life in such a positive way, and the funny part is I've told Sarah this, like from the minute I met her, Sarah is the extroverted version of my grandmother. Like, if my grandmother is an extrovert, that's what my grandmother was like Sarah, like is just like Sarah. She loved everybody. She loved as many people as she could have at her house. She was always cooking. She was always like, what can I do for you? It was never about her.
And I think when you meet people, like a lot of people know Sarah, but a lot of people don't. But the people like your grandmother and Sarah, I think it makes them really stand out as super connectors. And I'm going to put you in the same boat as them too, is they make you feel like you're the only person that matters in the moment, no matter how chaotic, how much other stuff is going in. They're just like, right here. I'm focused in on you. And they remember the details about your life. They remember the things that make you feel good. And you're just like, that person just gets me. And when I walk away, I feel so warm and special inside. I feel like I need to do better to just like live up to their legacy, to their, the level of the service that they bring to people.
It's kind of funny that, it's sad, but it was kind of a funny joke in our family because grandma had 11 children, and then she had 29 grandchildren, and then 15 great grandkids when she passed away, something like that. And my brother and I, because she had 11 kids, my mom was the second eldest and the first had kids. My brother and I were like 12 and 13. Mm-hmm. So there's always a joke about who was grandma's favorite, And when she passed away, I wasn't able to make the funeral because of the timing and flights and all this kind of stuff. And so I wrote a letter to her, and I found out that they read it, at the gravesite. And it was, the premise of the letter was, it's now time for me to reveal, because Grandma and I had this chat right before she passed away. I was there at the hospital. And we talked about being the favorite. And I wrote this letter like I wrote it as if Grandma told me the truth. Mm-hmm. And and I said, it's finally time for me to reveal the truth about who is your favorite. And everybody kind of, apparently I wasn't there, but there was a joke apparently that everyone groaned and went, of course Jackie Lee is going to say her. And so it was funny that I said, it was all of us. Everyone in your life, you made feel as if they were your favorite. And I believe that we all have that capability inside to make other people feel, and we all want it at the premise of who we are as human beings. You take away all of the crap. We all want to be loved, cherished, and we all want to feel validated in life. And that is at the base. That is at the basis of every human connection. Is, can you make this person in front of you feel like they are at least validated in life? Mm-hmm. And asking them those questions, then they'll walk away from you and they'll remember you. And the reality is that, you can go and connect 20,000 people, but at the end of the day, you get more back from connecting those 20,000 people than signing a $30 million deal.
Mm-hmm.
The things I remember the most, not the deals I've signed, because when people ask me, tell me about the projects you've done, I'm like, I don't want to talk about the projects I've done. I want to talk about the team that I worked with, because that's what made it impressionable. It's who I've met along the way, and that, to me, out of all of this craziness, those deep connections during this time is what has gotten me through all of my times in my life of crisis.
So my next question is going to bring us back a little bit, maybe full circle. You talked about leaving your legacy and reflecting on your life a bit. And right before we started recording the podcast, we're just kind of scratching the surface of this new venture that you're embarking on. I'm gonna call it a journey, because I think it's a bit like my journey with this podcast, and this idea of what happens if you just kind of put a lot of effort into making tons and tons of as many personal connections as you can, and not for numbers' sake, but for the idea of like, hey, if a little has taken you a long ways, like what if you do a lot? Like how much can your life change by going down this path? But you don't always know the journey it's going to take you. You don't always know where the destination is. You're like, I kind of know it's over here, but I'm not positive. I just know I need to take steps forward down this path, and it's going to reveal itself in time. I'm going to find my voice. I'm going to find my legs, and I'm going to figure out more, define where I'm going to go, but I'm going to start. So let's talk a little bit about what is up your sleeve.
Yeah, so I'm going to liken it to a little crazy adventure I did in 2014. I was traveling Europe with a girlfriend for a month, and she'd never really traveled before. And I said, you know what we're going to do? We're going to jump on a train in Italy somewhere, and we're just not going to even look at the board, and we're going to get off on one stop. We're going to explore that area, and then we're going to figure out how we're going to get back to our Airbnb. She looked at me like I had literally just told her that, the world was ending. So we did that, and it was pretty amazing, and we discovered somewhere in Italy that I'd never been before, never even heard of, and I kind of feel like that's what's about to happen. Is I'm going to get on a train. I don't really know I have no idea what the destination is, and I'm okay with that. And so several years ago, I worked for myself for about 7 years. In the last 12 months, I've tried working for other companies, and don't get me wrong, it's been amazing, and I feel very blessed. During this time, though, of furlough, I feel it's time for me to go back and reassess what makes me the best version of me. And so what I've looked at is that, people have expressed to me that they wish that I was available for one-on-one coaching with business development. And I'm like, oh, well, this opportunity right now is a really good time for me to do that. And I started looking at, well, that's what I was doing before. But what went wrong the first time? And the reality is nothing went wrong the first time. It's just that I think I lost a little bit of belief in myself and where I was going with my dream. And the other part of it is that a lot of people didn't believe that they actually had it in themselves, especially people that are naturally, introverted. And those people, whether it's architects are notorious for that. Engineers are notoriously known for that, that they're like too shy to go and make connections, and I can't do that. And the reality is that I'm like, do you have customers? And they're like, yeah. Well, we've already got a connection, a work connection. Now let's deepen that. Mm-hmm. And so the journey I'm about to embark upon is not just within the AEC community, but I want to teach people how to create a tribe from nothing, because I've done it a lot in my life. I haven't done it just once. I've probably got about 10 scenarios in my life where I've done that, At 22, when you pack up and know no one, and you come with literally a suitcase and $100 in your pocket and know nothing, I didn't realize at the time how scary that was and how kind of wild that was. It really was, especially when it was not quite 22 years ago, but getting there. Actually, it's 20 years ago. It'll be 20 years ago next year. And the reality is that I would like to open that door for other people to to understand who they are and connect with others and to dig deep, because that's what I'm good at. I'm good at understanding what people love and what their passions are, and I want to take advantage of my own abilities to help other people, because that's what I love to do. Mm-hmm. When people ask me, what do you want to do in life? I'm like, I want to help people. I want to make their dreams come true. And that's why, for me, the AEC community has worked really well, right? Because people want to build buildings. People want to build a restaurant. People want to build houses. I want to make that dream come true. And I'm like, well, how do I deepen that to where I wake up every single day and feel that I've had a mark on someone? And how that turns into money, you know what? I'm not going to worry about that. Yeah. I'm not going to worry about it.
When you go down that path of just, hey, the opportunity will present itself. You're going to put yourself in positions more likely to succeed, and I have no doubt that you're going to be successful at it, because you don't go and treat people with a mark of $$ on your head. So they're gonna sense that, they're gonna feel that real connection, that you're there truly to help. So I think you're not gonna lack for I won't call them clients, but the word me and Sarah have been using, I think, is Fri-ents or friendors. your clients, your friends. That's what she calls them, Fri-ents, and I call them, like, they're my vendors and my friends. So I call them friendors. Yeah. So when you go with this intent of, like, hey, it's friends first, it's relationships first. Yeah. The money will follow. I don't have to worry about it. Like, life has a way of providing what we need, and we've made it this far in life, and we haven't, starved to death. And I think we'll continue to find that life will provide. So I'm very excited for this journey you're on. So I've taken a ton of your time, and you've provided so much advice, so much awesome stories. Where can somebody find Jax if they want to connect with her?
So I'm about to launch a Facebook and an Instagram account calling it Tribe Creation. And I believe the website will be Tribe Creation as well. tribecreation.com, but I will get that final piece to you. But Tribe Creation Facebook page will be the first, and it'll have all my content on it. Also find me on LinkedIn under Jax Cunningham. It has Anderson in brackets because I used to be Anderson. And as Sarah likes to say, you'll always be Jax Anderson to me. So.
Yeah, and that's JAKS. So correct. Remember that. I think I first started looking for you under JAX. I'm like, where's she at? I can't find her.
Yeah, it's funny. By the way, I threw in there, and I don't know that you didn't catch it or you didn't say anything about it. I gave away my full name in there when I was telling a story about my grandma.
Yeah, I did hear that.
I never tell anybody that. And I went, oh, I just gave away my world's biggest secret.
I know, and we're recording it. So, and we've just brought attention to it. So if you rewind it back to about 38 minutes and 17 seconds, you'll have the secret.
And if anybody reaches out to me with that, I will be very happy and very impressed. And if you can find out how to spell it correctly, I'll buy you a beer if you can figure out how to spell it correctly.
So we have our first sponsor. Jax is going to buy somebody a beer for listening.
And no, you can't go ask Sarah Kilburn. And no, you can't ask my husband.
Yeah, very cool. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. All those places to find you will be linked in the show notes. Reach out to Jax. She's awesome. She's very friendly. She doesn't bite, and it'll be worth your time knowing her. So, thank you again so much.
Cheers.
Make sure to visit our website, therealnatepeo.com, where you can subscribe to the show on iTunes, so you'll never miss an episode of All In. While you're at it, if you found value, we'd appreciate a rating on iTunes, or if simply tell 2 friends about the show. Looking to connect? You can find Nate Peo on LinkedIn or Instagram.